Making headlines for this week of September 23rd. Check and mate. Geopolitical events close to climax amidst mass energies and sources of shift at this time. Financial dominoes falling. Evidence of paradigm shift in late September and October. Everything will change. Multiple messages, numerous sources suggest the fall of 2016 will be dramatic. And year we make contact. 1984 movie may hold key to new NASA press conference regarding a Jupiter moon.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. If such an incredible range of sources are to be believed at this time, everyone appears to be on the same page that very significant events are happening at this time on multiple levels and leading to changes that most will not even be able to imagine in this moment, for they are changes that will fundamentally reshape everything that humanity has held true for this current lifetime. Again, if these sources are accurate, this newscast and the coming newscasts may very well end up being among the most important newscasts I have delivered in the 4 years CVN has been on the air. To my knowledge, never have so many different sources from so many different backgrounds and specialties been in agreement about what is happening at this time. Geopolitically, the hot spot this week is Syria, where the global cabal appears to be digging in and trying what could be one final time to start a global war and get the world back into fear before the end of the U.S. fiscal year on September 30th and before the introduction of the Chinese yuan into the IMF basket of international reserve currencies known as the Special Drawing Rights, or SDR. With Russia closing in on the cabal militarily, and with China closing in on them financially, and with the global awakening of human consciousness finally starting to see this cabal and understand what they have done and are doing, it may be a bit more easy to see the desperation in the events that are unfolding. As you will hear shortly, everything is leading up to a climax over the coming 7 to 14 days. An article appearing on the Sputnik News website on September 22nd has dared to make the claim World War III has begun and it's being fought in Syria. The article reports that Syrian Social Nationalist Party representative Tariq Ahmad says that the war in Syria has reached a dead end with the intervention of foreign powers, turning the situation into a chaotic mess. Moreover, the politician says that Syria is just one front in a third world war being waged by Washington and its allies. Ahmad was quoted as saying that America's main objective is to bring any world power that threatens them under control. Consequently, Washington is waging a war with these powers, and these powers include China and Russia. The article added that with regard to the recently agreed upon Russian-U.S. ceasefire agreement, which is now looking less and less likely to be restored, Ahmad suggested that Russia always understood that the U.S.-Russian agreement on Syria would mean a U.S. defeat in this conflict, if the agreement was adhered to. It cannot also be a coincidence that at this time most global leaders or senior level representatives are at the United Nations for the annual meeting of the General Assembly. Although things have been building up for ages to this point, the trigger event appears to be the bombing of pro-Syrian forces and a humanitarian convoy by the U.S. military, as reported by the BBC on September 17th. Shortly after this, on the same day, RT reported that Russia was convening an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss U.S. actions in Syria. A war of words then erupted between the U.S. ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, and Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova. According to an RT article on September 18th, During a speech at an emergency UN Security Council meeting called by Russia to discuss the deadly airstrikes delivered by the US-led coalition, U.S. Ambassador to the UN Power said that Moscow's representative should be embarrassed for her words, suggesting that the strike indicated that Washington is defending Islamic State or Daesh terrorists. According to the Russian Foreign Ministry, the strike near the eastern city of Deir ez-Zor that killed 62 Syrian soldiers bordered between gross negligence and direct assistance to Daesh. Zakharova replied with a Facebook message to Power, a message reported on RT, Press TV, and other sources. The message read, "Dear Samantha Power, in order to know the meaning of the word embarrassed, I highly encourage you to travel to Syria and talk to the people there for yourself. And by that I do not mean the al-Nusra Front militants nor the moderate opposition whose humanitarian situation Washington seems to be so worried about. I likewise am not referring to the Western warriors for justice for Syria. I'm referring to the actual people that continue to live there in spite of the bloody experiment that has been waged on their homeland for over 6 years with active participation by Washington." The Moscow representative went on to say she herself is in constant communication with people on the ground, which includes both opposition forces dispersed across Syrian towns and the orphaned children left in the wake of the fighting there. "Let's go there together," Zakharova said to Power, promising she would pay all expenses for Power's trip to Syria. "Do say yes. Don't be frightened. Nobody will lay a finger on you in my presence. Unless, of course, your guys don't again mistakenly strike the wrong target. You'll make lots of new memories and find out what embarrassed means in the process," Zakharova added. Movie director Oliver Stone, whose movie about Edward Snowden was recently released, was quoted in an article by James Reinl on the Global Research website as stating that "We're not under threat. We are the threat." In a Sputnik News article from September 17th, Russian President Putin revealed why the U.S. is against making a deal with Russia on Syria public. The article writes that Russia has been urging the United States to disclose the details on the deal on Syria, which came into force last Monday. It aims to end violence in Syria and allow for relief aid deliveries. From Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, Putin was quoted as saying that the only reason why they apparently don't want to make it public is because the international community, as well as the American and Russian public, will immediately find out who is not abiding by the deal. I wish we were honest with each other, and I do not quite understand why we should conceal any of our agreements. Of course, we will not disclose them until our U.S. partners agree with it. I repeat that we have rather positive than negative attitude to these agreements, and we hope the promises given by the U.S. administration will be fulfilled. What is mind-numbing to observe is that while the Israeli government under Benjamin Netanyahu extorts billions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer money to promote a poor me agenda to the world, Anonymous reported on its website on September 20th that the U.S. has killed more than 20 million people in 37 victim nations since World War II. This apparently does not include the close to 20 million indigenous people deaths on North American soil in partnership with the Canadian government. Last week, CVN led the newscast with a recent report released by the U.S. Peace Council. In this report, numerous U.S. citizens from several peace-oriented groups participated in a fact-finding mission to Syria, and their overwhelming conclusion was that Syria is fighting an invasion by the most powerful country in the world, referring, of course, to the United States. The links from last week's newscast will be refreshed in the summary for this week's newscast for this story for any who missed the broadcast last week. Do not focus on the conflict itself. Focus on a situation that is occurring that is allowing truth to be exposed at this time for all to see. Yes, the situation may not be overly positive. For some people, an illness or an injury is not positive, but it offers lessons and opportunities. Observe the players and how they are acting and reacting. The Western faction of the global cabal is desperately seeking a war at this time, and although there may be smaller conflicts, one can be quite sure that this will not escalate significantly because many countries have already begun lining up against the U.S. and its power controllers. The U.S. is facing increased isolation in the world at this time until those responsible are rounded up and removed from their positions of influence. Focus on this and anchor the energies of positive transformation at this time. Coming up later, perhaps you'll understand better why keeping this focus is so very important, especially at this immediate time. One may be wondering how the situation in Syria came to this point. This is a possibly difficult question to answer because the answer may lie in how one is currently seeing the world and whether one chooses to accept that there is a shift in human and planetary consciousness taking place at this time. If one accepts this, then one may be able to grasp that what is unfolding now is merely a final exercise in exposing the negative energies that have enslaved humanity and destroyed the world for profit, power, control, and for creating fear. An article appearing on the Duran website by Afra Dagher on September 23rd looks into how the U.S., Israel, Al-Qaeda, and Daesh work together in Syria. She writes that the Syrian battlefield is now witnessing an escalation of the war. This is despite the fact that it is supposed to be a time of cessation of hostilities brokered by the U.S. and Russia. The Syrian war has two major fronts. The first and most important is in southern Syria, on the borderline with Israel and the occupied territories of the Syrian Golan Heights. This area is divided into two areas, the liberated area of Al-Quneitra and the occupied area of the Golan Heights, where Jabhat al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda's base their fighters. Israel has been attempting to drive the Syrian army out of Al-Quneitra. Israel's objective is to join this part of the Golan Heights to the territory it controls, thereby creating a buffer zone like the one it once had in southern Lebanon. In order to achieve this objective, Israel regularly bombs Syrian military positions in the area, including Syrian Arab Army artillery positions, radar stations, and so on. There is apparently a UN declaration between Israel and Syria regarding the Golan Heights. Reports suggest Israel routinely ignores all declarations relating to that region and often commits bombing raids in the area. In a change of policy, however, Syria has been striking back, and this is why an Israeli fighter jet was recently shot down. According to the article, the general opinion in Syria is that the terms of the ceasefire are secret because the U.S. has long-standing obligations to the moderate rebels, who are neither moderate nor are they rebels, but are actually terrorists, but has had to accede to demands from the Russians that it separates and identifies those fighters it supports from those it does not. Had the U.S. announced the terms of the ceasefire, the morale of the fighters would have collapsed, since it would have confirmed that they had, in effect, been defeated. They might even have rebelled against the U.S. The U.S. broke the ceasefire by striking a Syrian military base in Deir el-Zawr. The reporter describes having personally met a Syrian soldier who survived the bombing at the base, and the soldier described U.S. drones as having been flying over the base for more than 4 hours before the U.S. mistake occurred. The soldier thought the drones were mapping the area to help the U.S. get Daesh until he realized that the drones were actually conducting surveillance on the military base itself. While all this happens, it is then the role of the media to communicate to the Western world the right message to fulfill its agenda. Alexandre Mercoury, in his article for the Duran website on September 22nd, observes how the attack on a humanitarian convoy in Syria is a case study in the collapse of journalistic standards and ethics. The writer admits that he does not know who attacked the convoy in Aleppo, but he observes what was said and not said by all possible perpetrators. He writes that the Syrians and the Russians have publicly and categorically denied having done so. By contrast, the U.S. has stopped short of publicly identifying either the Syrians or the Russians as the perpetrators of the attack on the convoy, though they have said that it was attacked in an airstrike and that the only air forces of one or the other of these countries must have done it. They have also said that the Russians bear responsibility for the attack on the convoy, even if it was the Syrians rather than the Russians who did it. Instead of the U.S. publicly identifying who they say attacked the convoy, two U.S. officials are doing so anonymously in comments to the BBC and Reuters, spreading a story of two Russian Su-24 fighter bombers supposedly being seen in the air, and the question is by whom, in the area of the convoy. These same two unnamed U.S. officials are also claiming that the attack on the convoy was revenge for the U.S. airstrike on the Syrian troops defending Deir ez-Zor. The article continues, given the choice between straightforward public and categorical statements of denial from the Syrians and the Russians, and the elliptical, semi-secret, off-the-record insinuations of Russian guilt from the U.S., the Western media, without hesitation, preferred the elliptical, semi-secret, off-the-record insinuations of Russian guilt from the U.S. As a result, it was reporting all of yesterday as fact that it was the Russian Air Force which attacked the convoy. This is the reverse of what responsible journalism would do. It would seem that the U.S. has some vested interests in protecting the Aleppo region from falling back into the hands of the Syrian government. RT reported on September 22nd that, strategically, if the jihad terrorists lose eastern Aleppo, then strategically this war is over, according to Jim Jatras, a former U.S. diplomat, as telling RT. The fighting may go on for a while, but that will be the tipping point in terms of who is going to win, he added. The international bitterness over the crisis in Syria has been laid bare at a special UN Security Council meeting in New York. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said he wants a thorough and impartial investigation into the deadly attack on the UN convoy near Aleppo, which the U.S. has blamed on Russia without presenting any evidence. Evidence, however, appears to be abundant in proving U.S. and Western complicity in numerous crimes and attacks across the region. In May, an article appearing on the Friends of Syria website reported that Veterans Today now has confirmed sources that an American CIA agent was captured in that week in May near Mount Simeon outside Aleppo. The American was part of a group commanding an operations room, Jabhat al-Nusra, al-Qaeda's franchise in Syria. The CIA has denied the claim, but it has already floated an offer through third-party sources to buy back their man. VT also exclusively reported the capture of an Israeli advisor with Daesh in Iraq in October of 2015. There is a report that a Russian airplane this week had struck a location where it was alleged that Israeli officers were organizing Daesh operations, although I was unable to find this link in time for the newscast, so this report cannot be validated as of airtime on September 23rd. Let's get this show underway. It's time for change, and it's time to clean house from all the people and institutions that have been harming humanity for their own personal gain. In a couple of quick headlines for this week, an article appearing on the New Atlas website on August the 9th is helping to expose how non-governmental offices, or NGOs, are being corrupted by foreign money and foreign interests and are being used to help undermine a government or even actively help in destabilizing a country. The article notes how these controlled NGOs are damaging the efforts and intentions of the honorable NGOs, which only further supports that agenda of the global cabal. It comes down once again to the fact that no matter how much money one gives to an honorable NGO, the work will never be done in any country as long as there are other, wealthier, more influential interests acting in the same country against that country. According to the article, foreign interests seek to do this for a number of reasons, including pressuring a targeted government to make concessions regarding bilateral relations, competing with and eventually overrunning state institutions, and even replacing a nation's entire government. The article offers several examples of how this strategy has been used and proven. As well, the article identifies how Russia has been attempting to deal with the problem of NGOs in its country. The article writes that in Russia, legislation now requires foreign-funded organizations to declare on all written material and verbally declare before all audio statements their relationship with foreign interests. Those that fail to register as foreign-funded organizations or fail to disclose all of their funding face liquidation. While the U.S. and the myriad organizations it was running in Moscow predictably decried the legislation as oppressive, some might appreciate the irony of pro-democracy activists resisting calls for greater transparency, a fundamental prerequisite for a democratic society. And an article on September 13th by Zaid Jilani of The Intercept, Jilani reports that the architect of Britain's contribution to the Iraq War was caught in a leaked email as expressing relief that the Brexit vote in the UK distracted everyone from finding out more about the Chilcot inquiry and Britain's involvement in the conflict. On September 14th, an article on the Sirius Report website has begun to openly speculate and ask if the world is now witnessing the end of NATO because the cabal policy appears to be in disarray. The article offers numerous examples and closes with the following statement. It is quite clear that Europe now realizes and regards Russia as a partner and not an enemy, and that despite all the mindless rhetoric coming out of Washington, that the need for NATO with its borders is rapidly becoming an irrelevance. Russia, through its actions in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, as well as through the military cooperation agreements that it has signed with many nations, is also undermining NATO's influence in the world. Unless it is prepared to radically reform, it will become extinct in relatively short order. In financial news now, and there's a lot to note this week. As many will know, we are coming up to the end of the fiscal year for the United States. Think back to September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, when Donald Rumsfeld announced that the U.S. Defense Department had lost track of $3.2 trillion. And then the following day, the events of 9/11 allowed the Western media to conveniently forget the loss of that money. Now, 15 years later, shortly after yet another 9/11 observance where the truth is still not being reported to North Americans especially, and the U.S. Defense Department has again lost money to the tune of $6.5 trillion. As you will hear shortly, much of this money is being linked to black budget projects, such as deep underground military bases and also secret deep space programs that have not been revealed either to the world. With a rope becoming tighter around the necks of the global cabal, and with their attempts to ignite mass revolution within the U.S. failing, And with the Chinese currency soon to be adding its weight to the international basket of reserve currencies, it is no surprise that the global cabal is seeking to push Russia to war in Syria. In North America this past week, people were given a rare treat of watching the CEO of a too-big-to-fail bank being raked over the coals for his alleged involvement in a banking scam. An article appearing on the National Public Radio website by Bill Chappell on September 20th writes that facing off with the CEO whose massive bank appropriated customers' information to create millions of bogus accounts, Senator Elizabeth Warren had sharp questions on Tuesday for Wells Fargo CEO John Stumpf. Wells Fargo is paying $185 million in penalties already for acts that date back to at least 2011. The firm says it has fired some 5,300 employees who were found to have created false accounts as it sought to increase cross-selling, the number of accounts each customer holds. The following is the exchange between Warren and John Stumpf of Wells Fargo.
Since this massive years-long scam came to light, you have said repeatedly, quote, I am accountable. But what have you actually done to hold yourself accountable? Have you resigned as CEO or chairman of Wells Fargo?
The board, I serve at
Have you resigned?
No, I've not.
All right. Have you returned one nickel of the millions of dollars that you were paid while this scam was going on?
Well, first of all, this was by 1% of our people.
That's not my question. My question is about responsibility. Have you returned one nickel of the millions of dollars that you were paid while this scam was going on?
The board will take care of that.
Have you returned one nickel of the money you earned while this scam was going on?
And the board will do...
I will take that as a no then. Have you fired a single senior executive? And by that, I don't mean a regional manager or a branch manager. I'm asking about the people who actually led your community banking division or your compliance division.
We've made a change in our regional, to lead our regional bank.
I just said, I'm not asking about regional managers. I'm not asking about branch managers. I'm asking if you have fired senior management, the people who actually led community banking division, who oversaw this fraud, or the compliance division that was in charge of making sure that the bank complied with the law.
Carrie Toll said...
Did you fire
No.
any of those people? No. Okay. So you haven't resigned. You haven't returned a single nickel of your personal earnings. You haven't fired a single senior executive. Instead, evidently, your definition of accountable is to push the blame to your low-level employees who don't have the money for a fancy PR firm to defend themselves. It's gutless leadership. In your time as chairman and CEO, Wells has been famous for cross-selling, which is pushing existing customers to open more accounts. Other big banks average fewer than 3 accounts per customer, but you set the target at 8 accounts. Every customer of Wells should have 8 accounts with the bank. And that's not because you ran the numbers and found that the average customer needed 8 banking accounts. It is because, quote, 8 rhymes with great. This was your rationale right there in your 2010 annual report. And guess what? Wall Street loved it. Here is just a sample of the reports from top analysts in those years, all recommending that people buy Wells Fargo stock, in part because of the strong cross-sell numbers. Do you know how much money, how much value your stock holdings in Wells Fargo gained while this scam was underway?
Well, first of all, it was not a scam, and cross-sell is a way of deepening relationships. When customers
We've been through this, Mr. Stumpf. I asked you a very simple question. Do you know how much the value of your stock went up while this scam was going on?
It's all of my compensation is in our public.
Do you know how much it was?
It's all in the public filing.
Oh, you're right. It is all in the public records because I looked it up. while this scam was going on, you personally held an average of 6.75 million shares of Wells stock. The share price during this time period went up by about $30, which comes out to more than $200 million in gains, all for you personally. You should resign. You should give back the money that you took while this scam was going on, and you should be criminally investigated by both the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission.
There have been rumors circulating suggesting that Wells Fargo Bank is the bank or one of the key banks that will be participating in certain financial infrastructure changes. Assuming that this is true, the appearance of Wells Fargo's Mike Stumpf at a congressional committee on financial reform might hint that high-level banking officials may be close to getting their day of reckoning. Adding more fuel to the fire of financial tension this week is an article from Zero Hedge on September 16th reporting on the significant increase in sale of U.S. Treasury bonds by foreign central banks. The article notes China as selling off massive amounts, which would be no surprise, especially if China knows what is about to come and what the impact will be of their currency entering the IMF basket of global reserve currencies. The article writes that what is becoming increasingly obvious is that both foreign central banks, sovereign wealth funds, reserve managers, and virtually every other official institution in possession of U.S. paper is liquidating it at a never-before-seen pace. In some cases, like China, this is to offset devaluation pressure. In others, such as Saudi Arabia, it is to provide the funds needed to offset the collapse of the petrodollar and to backstop the country's soaring budget deficit. So who are they selling to? The answer, at least for now, is private demand. In other words, just like in the stock market, the retail investor is in the final bag holder. So when it comes to U.S. Treasuries, private investors are soaking up hundreds of billions in central bank holdings. We wonder if they would do that knowing who is selling to them, writes Zero Hedge. Now, what Zero Hedge may not know, or is choosing not to say, is that there is a secret department of the U.S. Federal Reserve known as the Exchange Stabilization Fund, or ESF. CVN reported on this some time ago, and in 2013, Max Kaiser of the Kaiser Report reported on his website that the Exchange Stabilization Fund is the most powerful financial entity on the planet. It is this fund that was created at the time when U.S. began confiscating the gold holdings of its citizens. This fund is allegedly used to buy up U.S. debt bonds that are sold and not purchased by another nation to artificially support the U.S. These bonds are then purchased from this fund to continue the illusion that a private investor is buying up the U.S. debt and thus keeping the U.S. economy afloat. The game appears to be up, however. Cliff High has gained a reputation for his work with predictive linguistics. His algorithms appear to have some degree of success in identifying and predicting future events based on the emotional content of information shared on the Internet. He recently shared what his data was revealing about this past week, and what could be happening next week and through October, especially with bonds and the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Within our reports back in August, when I was doing the post-report cleanup for August, I had a bunch of data that said that Hillary Clinton would out of the presidential race by the end of September to be replaced by a much younger man who would lose to Trump. Now we have the incident on 9/11 of Hillary getting a face plant into a van after her body basically gives out on her. Now the question is Hillary alive? Did she die on 9/11? It does not appear that the the videos that we've got or the still pictures we've got of Hillary since 9/11 are actually her. They look to be body doubles. The women that are purported to be Hillary Clinton do not match her body. Their facial features are different. One woman is shorter, one woman is thinner. There are at least two body doubles. And then there's CGI Hillary, the computer graphic version of Hillary that's been going around and doing some of the speeches. Our data sets had shown that Hillary was going to be out of the race, citing health issues by the end of September. There's a whole lot of crud in there around the 20th, 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of this month relative to bonds and the dollar and generally things economic. Now, there is a juxtaposition of those two sets. They're very tied together. So we have on one hand, we have the Hillary set over here, and then on the other hand, we have the bond problems, which leads to dollar problems set. Around this week, they start joining up. If I'm accurate, if the data sets were accurately interpreted, we should start seeing more and more language about fake Hillary, and we should also start seeing more and more language about the bonds crashing. And it's the bonds crashing that's the really big deal, which I'll get to in a second. Now, so the data sets show that Hillary would drop out, or be dropped out, really is how it put it. So I don't know that she's alive. We've not seen her since September 11th. Anyway, the data sets show that we're going to get this political hiccup in the midst of all of this bond problem. Now, I don't think that they're going to drop Hillary out of the race this week. I think it'll be very much closer to the end of September. But we're going to start seeing all the bond problems this week, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on the presidential campaign. The bond problems should really kick off on Wednesday and start rolling on through into next week. We should be getting into a situation where we'll have some temporal markers. We'll see Bitcoin go up, we'll see silver go up, we'll see gold follow silver in going up. It won't lead it. We're also going to start seeing more and more language appear now about silver shortages, investment-grade silver shortages. But that'll be more mainstream because it's going to be tied into all this new electric stuff, all of the solar panels, the Tesla cars, all of that business. The way it seems to play out within the data is that someone will make an announcement that Hillary is out of the race near the end of September. Huge amount of, as you may expect, huge amount of brouhaha in the press globally. And so during that period of time, that's when the bonds really take this big hit and we start seeing bond rates, the payout rates go up. So the yield goes up, the price goes down. That's going to really freak out government, and it's going to really freak out the central banking system to the point where we're going to see all kinds of statements that we would not have believed possible even 2 months ago coming out of the mouths of central bankers. They're going to try all kinds of weird stuff in a short period of time. There's going to be at least 3 major initiatives or plans put forward from the Fed or from government that we're going to discard. We're going to burn through these 3 plans over the course of the month of October. The language is just going to be extreme on all these particular subjects. Everything's sort of coming to a head at this period of time. This period of time is going to last from basically a couple of days ago when we first started seeing temporal markers about Montepaschi, the Italian bank, because that's still key. The Italian banks go through Germany and the whole thing ripples over onto us. It's happening right now. It'll exhibit itself in the yield on bonds, sovereign bonds, and then corporate bonds and everything else just get whacked. And that'll be through the month of October, and then by the time we get into the early part of November, the data from August had said that the Fed would become irrelevant to our lives, that no matter what they did, it wouldn't make any difference to anybody on the planet anymore. But specifically, it was focusing on USA population as the Fed not being relevant to what we do anymore. Now, it may take months for that to finally occur. Because of the way that it's shaped up in June and July, then it tells me that we're going to be getting bond yield spikes that are going to just shock people. But if you're in the financial business and or mess about with bonds at all, really, you will be quite shocked about the changes that are going to occur in such a very short period of time. Looks like about 65 days, really. Last 5 days of September, all of October, and then into November is when we see this bond business yields just through the roof and competition like mad to get people to buy their bonds, and then the Federal Reserve just throwing hissy fits right and left as they run into basically the bond wall that's going to bring down the dollar.
Coming up shortly in Science News, we'll look at the work of a scientist that offers information that may help validate the work of Cliff High, suggesting that human consciousness can be measured and defined by mathematical equations. For those that are able to focus on this, it is gently suggested that one avoid focusing on the idea that things are collapsing. Rather, things are being exposed and revealed at this time, so new choices can be made, individually and collectively, to move humanity and the planet forward in co-creating a better future for the highest good of all. Depending upon one's perspective, the markets are either collapsing or offering opportunities for something else. While some fall into fear, others are seeing what is happening and are taking steps to create solutions that will benefit people. The most informed people are now understanding that the current financial markets are corrupted, rigged, and otherwise set up to benefit everyone except the average investor. As this system moves through its so-called collapse, another system is rising up, claiming to offer the average population the same fair access to financial transactions that all members receive. There have been some rumors that one or several aspects of the global economic resetting may have to do with this company. The company is called IEX, the Investors Exchange. From 2 videos on the company website, we can learn a bit about the company's mission and a bit about the products and the philosophy.
An exchange has to adapt with technology. You don't want things to innovate around the market without the market innovating along with them. Because when that happens, structural inefficiencies occur where some people have advantages over others.
In my own utopian mind, you need to have an opportunity where both the buyer and seller of a given product know that the market is providing them with the fairest possible experience at the point of execution.
People's belief in the stock market and the fairness of the stock market should never be compromised, because I think the effects that has on broader society and the ripple effects that has through their perceptions of what happens in finance, those can't be repaired. IEX is set out to correct that.
Why does an exchange feel the need to provide one market data feed that the public consumes and to provide faster market data feeds to a certain segment of their customer base? It's a very simple question, but once you start to answer it, it really begins to open your eyes in terms of what is actually happening in this marketplace.
Regardless of where our different customers are located, regardless of how close they are to our system, we require that every single order go through this coil of fiber before it hits our matching engine.
There's no one who comes in that doesn't go through this 350 microseconds. Everybody does. This allows us to do things to protect our client, to not be involved in a single-digit microsecond arms race where, hey, say IEX is the fastest, but then 6 months down the line someone else is faster. We don't have to partake in that. Anyone who runs a regular trading strategy has no problem with it. Those that don't seem to.
Every decision that goes into making a new product or enhancement is scrutinized very closely to make sure, is it good for investors and the market as a whole?
The main thought process around creating new products is about not introducing complexity into an already complex system. It is about trying to introduce meaningful changes that actually simplify the current system.
What we've done at IEX is we've taken a very complicated stock market, we've broken it down to its most atomic level, and we've rebuilt it in the simplest form.
What our clients see is greater clarity and greater specificity into what they're doing and how they can improve for the benefit of their customers.
We can create a fair market that really allows investors, brokers, market makers to compete on fair terms.
We've created a market center that's very simple, very clean, very easy to understand. And we're a central spot where investors can meet and feel comfortable meeting. Wall Street's been aching for a solution that doesn't give an advantage to a certain participant who pays for that advantage.
Anyone can stand up and say, I believe in transparency, I believe in fairness, but the only way to really show that is in how you act. We can create a fair market that really allows investors, brokers, market makers to compete on fair terms. Wall Street will be disrupted by people currently working on Wall Street, and hopefully we're the start of that era. There's a cycle that's gone on for over 100 years in the stock market where you have a scandal. That scandal leads to a new set of regulations. As more and more regulation gets packed on top of our industry, it raises the barriers to entry for new people to come in and disrupt. And what it does is as the walls go up, it entraps the people who are causing the scandals on the inside.
With IEX, we've come up with a solution without the need for either legislators or regulators to take any action.
This isn't just about how can IEX be the biggest market, and this isn't about IEX being the most profitable exchange out there. This is about, wow, we can actually make a difference for a lot of people.
We face this challenge of trying to change the way things are done. And as a result, we've made a lot of enemies from people who like it just the way it is. This was most likely going to be my last job on Wall Street. You can't fight the system and fail and expect the system to accept you back. We're trying to be a different kind of stock market. And so it's disruptive amongst our competition, but I think on a much broader scale, it's also disruptive of the typical Wall Street culture.
For us, it's really important that fairness and transparency are driving our vision and the way that we look at the world.
If you're fly on the wall in IEX, you will recognize that everything that we do, everything that we implement, everything that we discuss, we talk about what we think is right.
We do whatever it takes to do the right thing, regardless of whether it's the hardest thing to do.
I know in my heart, we've brought more transparency to the market. We've brought the conversation more mainstream, literally down to mainstream.
That's something that excites us, that gives us motivation to come into the office every single day, because this is something much larger than just IEX.
We're never sort of forced to go down a road where something we don't feel in our heart of hearts is the right thing to do. Yeah, we're not compromised or challenged that way.
We cannot falter. We cannot compromise our integrity. We cannot let down our guard.
The markets need an easy answer. They need a simple answer, and that's who we are.
The company appears to be following a motto that when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Or to be more specific, don't try to change a broken system. Instead, build a new one that renders the old system obsolete. There appears to be a vision at work with this company that allows anyone to invest in the future, and to do so in a way that is more fair and more transparent for all investors seeking a new way of doing business while moving forward. Couple of quick financial headlines for this week. There are two articles that are too long to include in this week's newscast, but for those who are seeking some greater affirmation that a financial reset is on the horizon, and that China is playing an active role in this reset, two articles, parts 1 and 2, offer 80 reasons addressing these two topics. 40 reasons why a reset is on the horizon, and 40 reasons why China is playing a role in this reset. The links will be in the show summary for those wishing to explore more about this. A third link related to this is from Sophia Pale, writing for the New Eastern Outlook website. And in October, back in 2015, she reported that the implementation of the Silk Road project is just around the corner. And as you will hear shortly, David Palmer will tell us that he believes we are coming around a blind corner now. So, almost anything could be expected. In another quick financial note, an article is circulating reporting on a source, Fritz Springmeier, as reporting that he allegedly has inside information that the IMF will announce a new global currency on September the 30th. I mention this only for the reason that if this article should cross your path, observe the language and the fearful energies that are present in this article and ask yourself if this is really the situation that is unfolding. I verified with two sources that I trust that I was picking up on this article, that the energies I was picking up were correct and it did not feel right to any of us. What it appears to be is a classic case of the cabal trying to take something done by others and subvert that action by putting the blame on themselves when nobody knows that it is the cabal. What do I mean by this? Consider Syria. The U.S. managed to sneak chemical weapons into Syria and used those weapons to attack Syrians and then claimed that the Syrian government was killing its own people. In this case, a new financial paradigm is in the process of being implemented, and since it can no longer be stopped, perhaps it can be delayed and demonized by acknowledging the new system. But to make the implementers of the new system appear to the world as the global banking cabal, so the new system will not be received by the general public, or it will be received with greater skepticism. Use your strong discernment if this article should cross your path. In some general news, I'd like to explore some of the various sources that are now aligning in their messages, suggesting that change is imminent within the coming days and weeks. The following is a small sampling of the kind of information that is being made available. An interesting correlation and connection has been made between Daryl Anka, who shares messages from an entity known as Bashar, and Corey Goode, whom many will recognize as the source of information regarding the existence of several secret deep space programs existing around Earth at this time. In an article posted on the Other Than Earth website on September 18th, John Turpa wrote the following. In 2014, Bashar, an extraterrestrial being channeled by Daryl Anka, made a startling prediction. In your upcoming fall of 2016, everything will change. Turpa mentions briefly the U.S. election as being one example where things are not proceeding as they historically have in the world. Turpa continues, Bashar is a being who claims to be from a planet called Essassani and is channeled by Anka. If you know who Bashar is, you may have noticed that his main focus is on how we as humans can improve ourselves, love each other, and to follow our greatest excitement. He periodically talks about other ET races, his home, and what is out there, although he rarely goes into predictions. In 2014, Bashar opened a channel to 3 beings that orbit his planet. These beings identified themselves as Epsilon, Epiphany, and Eclipse. Their function is to be a conduit of the Sassani people, the beings that live on Essassani, as their collective oversoul, or collective consciousness. These 3 beings describe themselves as spheres that glow in a blue-white light and are approximately 75 miles in diameter and orbit their planet. Turpa compares this to information coming out this year from Corey Goode, and Turpa writes the following. In 2015, Corey Goode came out as a whistleblower claiming he was part of a covert Earth-based secret space program. These humans have quite an array of exotic technologies that many of us can barely even dream of. Turpa continues, now here's where it gets interesting. Corey Goode also claims he is in contact with the Sphere Being Alliance. This SBA include the Blue Avians, who have humanoid bodies and bird-like faces, the Golden Triangle Head beings, who also have humanoid bodies with inverted triangular-shaped heads, and the Sphere beings, who are the blue spherical beings and can be the size of a baseball to the size of Jupiter in an instant. According to Corey Goode, these sphere beings are all over our solar system, especially around Earth. They are here to postpone a solar event, giving us time to bring our planet into balance through a full disclosure initiative implemented by We the People and what is called the Earth Alliance. Throughout Corey Goode's testimony, he has been briefing us on massive movements by the Earth Alliance groups to topple the power elite, also known as the Cabal, Illuminati, or syndicate groups. He is also saying that these movements are escalating and are reaching a tipping point. The times we are in now are quite important, according to Goode. There are amazing synchronicities in both messages, and given that we are now in the fall of 2016, the sources are now saying that everything will change. Political and financial events are supporting this, and other messages are also supporting this. What else do we have? On September 20th, Sandra Walter wrote that our third wave of 2016 is beginning to crest, with its initial frequencies heralding the new. Gatekeepers and grid workers have been busy for weeks. Gaia and the new grids are responding already, and we are prepared for the new arrival next week. This is an influx of highly charged pure light which takes us to a brand new level, As always, vibrational match is key to your experience of it. However, these frequencies are aimed at assisting an accelerated timeline. For the Ascension tribe, the veils are thinning again, and our realities feel more surreal than grounded. As we have learned from the 2 earlier waves, that is typical for these wave influxes this year. This one involves a timeline shift, so our focus is needed more than ever. Solar and Gaia gateways will be opened on the equinox, and the crest of the wave arrives September 26th, extending through the 30th. This is a purer, crystalline-based frequency which is aimed at consciousness shifts. Remember this, even as your physical realities begin to feel somewhat surreal, and the body adjusts just to keep up. A message from Ascended Master Sananda via channel Jenny Schiltz, appearing on the Channeling the Masters website on September 19th, shares this with readers. This is the time period when all of your lives, your lessons, and growth achieved come into one final culmination. For those that have chosen to ascend, this is your graduation time. What graduation means for each person will look and feel differently. Yet, the premise for each soul is the same. It is during this lifetime that you will remove all that impedes you from embodying your soul on earth. It is in this beautiful merging that you will understand the reason for your incarnation on earth and everything you have gained. At this moment, the accelerated timeline is anchored into your world, and this allows each of you to access it. With the approaching equinox, you each have the opportunity to leave behind the old and walk into the new. It is for this reason that so many of you have been experiencing deep releasing of the physical and emotional. It is coming forth for you to see it, feel it, and choose to leave it in the past. While this may feel overwhelming and you may feel at a loss on how to let go and move beyond what was, the answer is quite simple. When you are feeling burdened by your fears, your past, or your patterns, sit and ask your heart chakra to open to its fullest. Ask that you receive all the love that Source has to offer, and that this love help you to release all that is not stable within you. We ask you to not only let go of all the layers within that keep you from embodying your highest aspect fully, but that you let go of all expectations. This is how you will best utilize the energies that are streaming into your planet. These energies will change all, and how much depends upon each person. Yet, many will look back to this time as the catalyst that changed everything for your world. Romeo Barron, in an article on the In5D website on September 18th, shares that the Fall Equinox 2016 will allow another huge acceleration of ascension energies to blast through the crystic grids of Mother Earth. And then the winter solstice, the final blast of cosmic light energy coming from the collective consciousness of the Elohim Guardians, including the Alliance of the Cosmos. When this great explosion of divine light flows through the planet, everything will change. This fall will bring the first stage of the planetary shift, the opening of ascension portals that will allow all the stargates to activate. The opening of the ascension portals will be completed, and this will allow the original Christic light consciousness to remove anything that is not in harmonic alignment with the original divine plan for Mother Earth. This is what will truly shift us into a new Earth reality. In late August, an article by Eva Serra, appearing on the Project Freedom Earth website, shares a message via her connection to Archangel Michael, sharing that you are living in unprecedented times. September to December of 2016 will be the most important and energetic Earth period in human history, because the 3D matrix now comes to its end, and the beings that resonated with it are in for an extreme awakening as they move from a third-dimensional reality to a fifth-dimensional reality in a very short linear time period. The final phase. Many are aware that something huge is going to happen and is already happening in our bodies, our personal lives, and on a planetary scale and even on a galactic scale. Lisa Renee, in an article published on September 23rd, also on the In5D website, offers a bit more advanced information for people who are more familiar with the energetic changes taking place now. She shares that the pinnacle of the ascension cycle marks the end of the 3D collective timelines on the Earth, as the planet is moving into higher frequencies that are located in a future time-space. It is shifting the planetary consciousness into a future dimensional octave. What is important to discern is that this is a planetary event that is impacting everyone on the Earth and beyond. At the end of 2017, the planetary body is shifting into the higher frequency band that is located in the next harmonic universe. This event will change the planetary coordinates, planetary timelines, thus changing where the planet is actually located in universal space-time. The lower three-dimensional frequency bands will cease to exist in the planet. The people that remain in the third-dimensional consciousness after this shift will find themselves increasingly uncomfortable, extremely pressurized, and unhappy. Thus, many will feel the squeezing pressure to transform rapidly through the alchemical theme of polarity synthesis, which helps to bring completion to these old karmic patterns from the past, if we are willing to let them go. This is why the global cabal is unleashing all of these weapons of mass distraction at this time. They want people to be in fear and separation. As long as people are getting emotionally charged over Clinton, Trump, or whatever else, they will not be focusing on balancing their energies and connecting to the higher vibrations and the timelines for global change that will eliminate this cabal once and for all from the new emerging reality. Astrologically, things are wild also, and the following are excerpts from a source known as the Leo King. David Palmer is an astrologist, TV personality, and DJ.
For the week of September the 21st through the 26th of 2016. And so, this week, there's a lot of aspects to talk about. Wow. First of all, I did a video yesterday about eclipse hangover and how it could feel like we're at a really intense eclipse hangover. That's because the eclipses are over, and the most important thing that is happening this week is that Mercury is getting out of retrograde. You know, this Mercury retrograde was tough. It was in Virgo, wanting in its natural sign. You got to remember, Mercury's in its natural sign of Virgo. And while the sun's in Virgo, the whole time in this Mercury retrograde. But how ironic that the day Mercury gets fully out of retrograde, the sun gets out of Virgo and we come into Libra, and this is where Venus is naturally is home is Libra, and this is where Venus will be on its last day, and this is also where Jupiter is now. So we're going to be switching stories real quick on Thursday, equinox time, and I want to remind everybody that Wednesday, the last day before the 22nd, is the last day where the sun and the moon will be in the first 6 signs of the zodiac. We are now moving into the next 6 signs of the zodiac. You know, we're at half of the year. So what a way to close the last 6 months of your life, as a whole entire new 6 months is coming up. And so there's a lot to think about with that, and there's a lot to really process about that as well. I think it's so important to really pay attention to the different angles that we are looking at everything in our life. Mercury's coming out of retrograde, and it's coming out of retrograde with a direct trine to Pluto, which this week Pluto as well will come out of retrograde. Now, Pluto takes 6 months to go retrograde and then finally move forward. So to have Mercury this week come out of retrograde, to have Pluto this week come out of retrograde is very intense. All while at the same time we're coming into an equinox period, and on top of it, we are going to have the Sun and Jupiter meet up. So there is a lot of energy going on right now in the zodiac, and a lot of this energy is about the new horizons to look at, the new roads, and there's this like kind of weird in-between little spot here of right before Mercury gets out of retrograde. So if you're watching this and it's right before Mercury comes out of retrograde on Thursday and the sun comes into Libra, I think that this is like shaking off the last 6 months. And especially even deeper than that, shaking off the whole 2016. You know why? Because Mars has been in Scorpio and Sagittarius, mainly Sagittarius, for most of this year. This week, Mars gets out of Sagittarius. Whew! This is going to be very rare because, every 2 years we go through a year where Mars gets stuck in one area for a year. And then we go 2 years where Mars gets to kind of like run around and go through every sign. And it takes 2 years for Mars to come around. Mars is finally back on track, and Mars comes back into Capricorn where it's exalted, meaning it's one of its favorite signs to be at. That means things are going to start moving forward by the end of this weekend, especially after Pluto comes out of its retrograde, especially after this Mercury retrograde is over. So this weekend is a real propulsion of things starting to move forward, new horizons, really big positivity. It's Sun and Jupiter starting to conjunct. Oh, to be honest with you all, I'm super excited about this week. It has so many positive aspects coming to it, and I think it's very important for us to really pay attention to it. Believe it or not, this is going to be the most stuff going on at Libra for the whole year. Kind of crazy, I think. To be honest with you, I'm like, wow. It's only going to be one day, and it's just going to be the day when Mercury comes out of retrograde. So Thursday really is the new beginning point, a really positive new position for us all, and a look to bring more peace in our life, and also look at, are we mirroring the right connections in our life? Are we mirroring the right relationships? This is all about relationships that's going to come this week. Really intense. So much good happening. So much to shed from the past. So much to move forward into. Hesitation can become brutal. When you get a Sun and Jupiter in Libra and a Mars entering into Capricorn and a Pluto direct and a Mercury direct, we have to move forward. We have to go. This is Mercury. You will never see, I'm going to be honest with you all, you will never see Mercury come direct, trine Pluto exactly at the same time that it's about to come direct. Won't see it, folks. This just does not happen. You are getting so deep to the truth of who you are, of what you want in your life, of the world that you want to create. This is also as well a Sun-Jupiter week. Booyah, baby. Look at that with the moon in Leo and a perfect sextile. I'm telling you all, Sunday is a holy day. One of the holiest days of the year. Of positivity, of love, of connections, of people coming together. Reconnections that you never dreamed possible. To be honest with you, especially with Venus entering Scorpio, the good part of Venus in Scorpio, even though it is detriment, right? It's not in the best position, is the fact that we can look deeper, that we can find a way to connect. And we just need to remember what's valuable and what's not. That's what this week before kind of showed us. But you know what you want. Don't do anything you wouldn't want to do. Don't do anything you wouldn't want to stick with for a long time, because Venus and Scorpio will stick there for a while. It'll stick there. You decide that you want to connect with that person. You decide you want to connect with that project. Well, you better go in for the long haul. Venus and Scorpio is going to say, okay, especially with Juno and, Black Moon Lilith conjuncting this week in Scorpio with Venus in there. Boy, these are past life karmic or / twin flame or / relationships that are destined to come together that are going to come out of nowhere maybe. Who knows? I have no idea. We are coming out of this corner. There is so much positivity happening in that holy day. Look at that, man. We also have the moon square Venus, Mercury trine Pluto, Pluto stationary, Mars at the final degree. Sunday is a holy day because you know why? Monday is a game changer. Mars is going to come into Capricorn late that night, Pluto direct, and talk about change in the way the world works with Pluto in direct in Capricorn. And I'm going to finish with that.
So the astrology alignments, according to Palmer, are bringing an ending to all that has been holding humanity back at this time. As Palmer says, and as the other sources suggest, now is the time to focus on what you are seeing and creating for yourself, your relations, your service, and also for humanity and our planet generally. Politics and finances are being shaken down at this time. It is perhaps therefore not surprising that we are climaxing with a claimed war in Syria, with the ending of the U.S. fiscal year on September 30th and the Chinese yuan coming into the global sphere of basket of currencies on October 1st, and so much more. To top it off, NASA has another announcement relating to a celestial body in our solar system, and this cannot be a coincidence either. More on this shortly. Videos for Bashar and the Leo King, as well as links to all source articles, will be in the show summary for this story. In disclosure-related news, there are some interesting events to note this past week, some of which are official, and, admittedly, at least one of which is speculation without definitive proof to back it up. What makes it all worthy of consideration, however, is the degree to which so many different events, different sources, and different messages are coming out at this time, specifically to compete for human attention. Yes, some of them will be deliberate sources of misinformation or disinformation. And yes, there will be some that have a mixed bag of truth and disinformation contained within. There will, however, always be the nuggets of information that are releasing a more complete perspective on the unfolding shift at this time, and it will be up to us to connect the dots and share the puzzle. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to learn how to tap into your inner guidance and intuition and discern what you believe to be happening for your highest good at this time and your highest service to humanity and the planet. Dr. Stephen Greer continues his work on various levels to bring credible people to the forefront who are ready to share what they know and have experienced from within numerous agencies that have been contributing to the cover-up of the existence of life and advanced technologies from beyond Earth. Stephen Bassett continues his work on lobbying government officials within Washington to push for an official, more public exploration into the cover-up of the truth about civilizations and technologies from beyond Earth. Videos are appearing almost daily of alleged new sightings of craft around the planet. Although some are admittedly photoshopped or faked, there are others that lack a legitimate explanation and can possibly be linked to craft that were either built on Earth using non-Earth advanced knowledge, and there are no doubt some that are legitimately from beyond our planet itself. There are sources describing advanced space programs already in place and have been for a long time, and there is a battle heating up between the forces that would seek to keep humanity enslaved for profit and power of a small group of humans and possibly non-humans. There are also numerous sources sharing messages of empowerment that humanity and our planet is entering a phenomenal wave of transformation that will begin to expose, release, and ultimately heal the bonds of enslavement that have harmed humanity and the planet. This transformation, according to many, is coming with assistance of benevolent members of our galactic families who are fulfilling their own spiritual growth and ascension by offering their careful and guided influence with humans who are ready to receive it, but also they are helping our planet that has been harmed greatly by the group that has been enslaving humanity. Think of it this way. There are humans that are awake and living in life-honoring ways, attempting to help others wake up. There are humans that are choosing not to live this way intentionally, and there are humans that are not yet aware of their enslavement, and they are slowly awakening to this as they observe others awakening and step into their power to co-create global change. There are civilizations from beyond Earth that are exactly the same way. Just as awake humans attempt to help other humans awaken, so too are there civilizations seeking to guide and influence events and situations that may help those who are ready for the truth to receive it in a way that is meaningful for them, while not being invasively interfering. In this way, galactic families experience their growth and evolution, just as humans upon Earth experience our growth and evolution. In the show summary this week, I'm going to post some links of videos and websites that will offer information for reflection of any who are interested in viewing them. If you are looking for media articles covering the topic of the existence of life beyond Earth, Stephen Bassett has updated his website with articles in the media covering his work with Paradigm Research Group. Also, there are links of a video allegedly claiming that Russian cosmonauts have arrived at Saturn, and the video is allegedly showing the cosmonauts in a spacewalk from ships with Saturn in the background. I want to make it clear that I'm not yet sure about the validity of this video. What I will say, however, is that I believe it is possible the video is true. I say this for several reasons. One, based on the sources claiming that there are secret space programs already in space, the technology, therefore, is already available to get to planets further away, such as Saturn. Two, Russia appears to be in possession already of advanced technology that is capable of shutting down advanced U.S. military technology. This technology appears to be advanced enough to be considered non-Earth in origin. Three, Russia has quietly been moving forward on advanced Tesla technologies, and they have also been making quiet hints in various channels about the existence of life beyond Earth. The Russian logo for the World Cup soccer event in 2018 appears to be a very public suggestion that there is life beyond Earth, and that there are civilizations attempting to reach us, and that there are humans attempting to reach and connect with the stars. Ironically, also this week, Russia unveiled its countdown clock for the World Cup football event, perhaps another subtle hint by the Russians that if global events continue on the current path to 2018, Russia may have another message for the world at that time relating to disclosure. The coming days and weeks may very well determine whether or not the global cabal will continue to have any significance in global affairs from this point forward. The video of cosmonauts allegedly at Saturn, whether real or not, at least helps fuel an awakening dream within humans about life beyond Earth and is preparing humanity for a reality where Earth is a galactic star nation. Also in the show summary will be video footage that has allegedly been leaked from military sources around September the 11th showing UFO activity over Puerto Rico. Given that Puerto Rico has apparently allowed itself to go into public default over its debts, and given the recent island-wide power failure this past week due to an alleged fire at the power plant of the Electric Power Authority of Puerto Rico, one may be inclined to wonder if there are sources attempting to prevent information from coming out from Puerto Rico that could impact the thinking of the rest of the population in the U.S. This is an example of connecting dots of different, seemingly unrelated events. All of these will require one's own discernment. Try to learn to read between the lines and to observe what may be truth, even if something is not being said specifically. There is yet another very intriguing event announced this week that will happen next week, and it is something that may have been given to us as far back as 1984. NASA has seemingly been coming out this year with more and more press conferences suggesting that new discoveries are being made showing the increased likelihood of Earth-like planets being somewhat close, relatively speaking, to our planet. This week, posted on the NASA website, was the following. NASA will host a teleconference at 2 p.m. Monday, September 26th to present new findings from images captured by the agency's Hubble Space Telescope of Jupiter's icy moon, Europa. Astronomers will present results from a unique Europa observing campaign that resulted in surprising evidence of activity that may be related to the presence of a subsurface ocean on Europa. NASA claims that this is evidence of surprising activity, although for many it will not be surprising at all, and indeed NASA just can't come out and say that they have been in possession of suppressed knowledge, for it could have a negative impact on those who are not yet ready to receive it. Given the current geopolitical and geoeconomic climate and the rising energies of consciousness shifting, Information of this nature could have a dangerous impact on souls that are not of a sufficient vibration to receive this information and process it safely and critically. NASA is calling a press conference to discuss surprising activity on Europa. It is interesting, but is this really a big deal? Well, it may or it may not be. The hint is in the timing of this particular announcement, in combination of what is already happening this month. For those who choose to follow the reports of Benjamin Fulford, they will know that he does not very often bring up the subject of ETs or life beyond Earth. This week, however, he offered the following. In any case, the rest of the world has clearly already decided to bail out on the U.S. corporate government. In the past year, foreign central banks have dumped $343 billion worth of U.S. government bonds, and the sell-off is accelerating. It is not surprising they refuse to invest in a government that admits $6.5 trillion went missing from its military budget in 2015 alone. Agency sources say the $6.5 trillion was laundered through the Clinton Foundation and spent on the USAP, the unacknowledged special access projects, such as deep underground bunkers and the secret space program, especially in the Antarctic and Patagonia. Fulford continues, this makes sense on the one hand, and we have an official U.S. Defense Department budget of $651 billion for 2015, and yet that same Defense Department issues a report saying that $6.5 trillion, or 10 times the official budget, went missing. This may mean the UFO people are finally going to get some real disclosure about the secret space program they have long talked about. The last time it was announced that the U.S. Department of Defense had lost track of massive amounts of money, as mentioned earlier in the newscast, was on September 10th, 2001, right before 9/11. There is also something else that is extremely intriguing about what is happening now in light of this announcement concerning Europa, and it is also connected to the current geopolitical climate. This intriguing element comes in the form of what appears to be a prophecy contained within a 1984 movie called 2010, the year we make contact. This movie was the sequel to the original 2001, A Space Odyssey. Those who are interested in this can look the movies up online. The movie predicted the year 2010 as a year of contact with the mainstream people of Earth because an event happens that is so significant that it is visibly seen and experienced by everyone, and thus the truth could no longer be contained. During this second movie, in this nutshell explanation, a Russian spacecraft is sent to Jupiter with an American crew on board to rescue an allegedly stranded American ship there that was investigating an anomaly called a monolith. While there, political tensions increased between the U.S. and Russia on Earth to the point where war is expected, and the American crew is ordered to leave Russian territory and return to the stranded American ship. Now, is there a possibility that this news of Russian presence near Saturn, could that be connected to an American ship? That is pure speculation. However, continuing, a miracle begins to happen, and the planet Jupiter begins to implode in preparation for going supernova. Recall what Corey Goode reported moments ago, saying that the Sphere Being Alliance was here to postpone a solar event. Perhaps the delay of 6 years from 2010 to 2016 before a planet in our solar system goes supernova. Despite political tensions on Earth, the American and Russian crews must race to work together for the safety of all. The artificial intelligence, called HAL, aboard the American ship almost kills everyone until one of the American crew is able to explain what is happening in such a way as to allow HAL to make a choice to sacrifice its life to preserve the lives of all the crews aboard the Russian ship. As Jupiter goes supernova, the following message is transmitted to Earth. All these worlds are yours, except Europa. Attempt no landing there. Use them together. Use them in peace. The movie closes with the leader of the American crew, played by actor Roy Scheider, sending a letter to his son back on Earth before being put into long-term sleep for the journey home. A video clip of that scene and the message will be included in the show summary, but the letter describes how the U.S. and Russian leaders awoke to a new reality with two suns in the sky, and they read the message, and they recalled all their planes and ships, and a new era of peace was begun. Ironic, is it not, that although Russia and the U.S. were not enemies in 2010, the U.S. is now, in 2016, perceiving Russia as an enemy at this time, and is actively seeking to blame Russia for activities being created by U.S. agents to start a war. It is happening at a time of great geopolitical shifting and realignment, and it is also happening at a time of great awakening among the people of the planet. Now, NASA is seeking to share with the world something relating to Europa, a planet that humanity was allegedly warned to make no attempts to land upon it. Coincidence? I'm betting that it is not. I'm more inclined, however, to feel that it is a synchronicity that is in alignment for a plan for greater changes than most humans would ever allow themselves to dream at this time. Over to science-related news now, and we explore a bit of the science and math that may be related to what humanity understands as consciousness. There have been sources that have suggested that we are living in a matrix, and there are others saying that we are living in a hologram, and others still suggesting that we are living in a computer-generated program. There are at least two challenges connected to these particular arguments. One is that we need to establish or determine whether or not each of these sources are referring to the same thing. And the second challenge is to determine whether or not this thing being referred to is a simulation within a simulation for the global cabal control to continue manipulating us, or whether it is a creation of a benevolent creator source, allowing us to have these experiences of knowing who we are, while also allowing us this period of so-called awakening to now make the choice to exit the enslavement matrix. There is perhaps a third option, that I, and others who may think this way, are totally insane, and I cannot rule out the choices of others to think this way, one way or the other. This is part of the journey. Humanity has been tricked into accepting definitions that have helped us to interpret our reality. Even the concept of time has been defined for us, and we have been conditioned to live our lives within this construct that we never questioned, but merely accepted it as fact. Until we begin to understand our place, at least within the universe, but arguably also within the multi- and omniverse, time, at least as we currently know and experience it, is purely an Earth-specific construct. For no other celestial body, except possibly the moon, moves around our sun in the same way and within the same period as other celestial bodies. In this period of awakening consciousness, humanity is finding itself being faced with questions that exist outside of the conditioning that has been taught to humanity through religion, education, and media. We are approaching a threshold of beginning to understand exactly what consciousness is. Before this question can be fully answered, one may argue that we may first have to come to understand exactly what we are a part of, and what our purpose is within this space that we currently occupy. In January of 2014, an article appeared on the Medium.com website with the following title: Why Physicists Are Saying Consciousness is a State of Matter, like a solid, a liquid, or a gas. The article states at the beginning that a new way of thinking about consciousness is sweeping through science like wildfire. Now, physicists are using it to formulate the problem of consciousness in concrete mathematical terms for the first time. Now, by first time, it implies, of course, that this is the first time the question is being presented in a general public forum. The article writes that there's a quiet revolution underway in theoretical physics. For as long as the discipline has existed, physicists have been reluctant to discuss consciousness, considering it a topic for quacks and charlatans. Indeed, the mere mention of the C word could ruin careers. That's finally beginning to change, thanks to a fundamentally new way of thinking about consciousness that is spreading like wildfire through the theoretical physics community. And while the problem of consciousness is far from being solved, it is finally being formulated mathematically as a set of problems that researchers can understand, explore, and discuss. This article introduced the individual behind the theory, Max Tegmark. Several months later, in June, he gave a TEDx presentation to discuss consciousness as a mathematical equation. Shortly after this, in July of the same year, Tegmark presented his peer-reviewed paper, identifying consciousness as a state of matter. An article appearing on the Science Alert website on September 16th shares the following. Consciousness isn't something scientists like to talk about much. You can't see it, you can't touch it, and despite the best efforts of certain researchers, you can't quantify it. And in science, if you can't measure something, you're going to have a tough time explaining it. But consciousness exists, and it's one of the most fundamental aspects of what makes us human. And just like dark matter and dark energy have been used to fill some otherwise gaping holes in the standard model of physics, researchers have also proposed that it is possible to consider consciousness as a new state of matter. There are sources telling us that we are divine beings, energetic beings, and that we have the ability to manifest into physical form anything we want. The predominant reason why this has not been so is because humanity collectively chose to experience a lower vibration of existence without this ability, so that we could begin to know ourselves experientially. In other words, to know who we are through all the experiences of who we are not. Some argue that the dormant DNA within our bodies, what some call junk DNA, is actually part of an elaborate program that is designed to activate at a certain time or when certain conditions become present. Consider a baby in a womb. The DNA is coded in such a way that certain parts of the body grow in a certain pattern. The toes or fingers do not grow until the arms and legs have formed. However, all parts of the human body evolved from one single cell. Therefore, it cannot be denied that within that one cell, and therefore within every cell of our bodies, is the coding for everything that we are or ever will be. The following is part of Tegmark's TEDx presentation in June of 2014.
Consciousness. We've all wondered about the mystery of consciousness, but they're really two separate mysteries, as the famous philosopher David Chalmers has emphasized. First, there's the mystery of how our brain processes information, which David calls the easy problems of consciousness. And even though they're actually very hard, we've made huge progress in recent years on building computers that can play chess, that can process natural language, that can answer quiz show questions, that can drive cars, and so on. But then there's a second mystery of consciousness that David calls the hard problem of consciousness. Why do we have subjective experience? If I'm driving a car, I'm having a subjective experience of colors, of sounds, emotions, and thoughts. But why? Does a self-driving car have any subjective experience? Does it feel like anything at all to be a self-driving car? Well, I'm a physicist, and from my physics perspective, A conscious person is simply food, rearranged. So why is one arrangement conscious and not the other? Moreover, from my physics perspective, food is just a bunch of quarks and electrons arranged in a certain way. So why is one arrangement, like your brain, conscious, while another arrangement, like a bunch of carrots, not? This physics perspective goes against the idea that philosophers like to call dualism, that consciousness is explained by adding something beyond physics, some extra ingredient, a life force, elan vital, or a soul. And this idea of dualism has gradually lost popularity among scientists, because if you were to measure what all the particles in your brain are doing and find that they perfectly obey the laws of physics, then that would mean that this purported soul is having absolutely no effect on what you're doing. Whereas if you were to measure instead that these particles in your brain are not obeying the laws of physics because they're being pushed around somehow by the soul, then that brings the soul into the domain of physics, right? Because you can now just measure all these new forces that the soul is exerting and study the properties physically of it, just as you would study the properties of a new field or a new particle like the Higgs boson. From my physics perspective, a bunch of moving quarks and electrons are nothing but a mathematical pattern in space-time. A bunch of numbers specifying positions and motions and various properties of these particles like electric charge and other numbers that you can see in this table here. And from this physics perspective, the hard question of consciousness that David Chalmers posed gets transformed into a form I like much better. Instead of starting by asking the hard question of why some arrangements of particles feel conscious, we can start with a hard fact that some arrangement of particles, like your brains, are conscious and not others. And we can ask, what are the special physical properties that these arrangements have to be conscious? Neuroscientists have had a lot of progress recently, including right here, in figuring out what subjective experiences correspond to different neuron firing patterns in your brain, which they call neural correlates of consciousness. But before that, this whole physics perspective really begs the question, now, how can something as complicated as consciousness possibly be explained by something as simple as particles? Well, I think it's because consciousness is a phenomena that has properties above and beyond the properties of its particles. And we physicists call phenomena that have properties above and beyond those of their parts emergent phenomena. Let me explain this with an example that's simpler than consciousness. Wetness. A water droplet is wet, but an ice crystal or a gas cloud is not wet, even though they're made of the exact same kind of water molecules. So it's not the particles that make the difference, it's the pattern into which they are arranged. So solids, liquids, and gases are all emergent phenomena in that they have properties above and beyond those of their particles. They have properties that the particles don't have. I think that just like solids, liquids, and gases, consciousness too is an emergent phenomenon. Because if I drift off into sleep and my consciousness goes away, I'm still made out of the exact same particles. Only thing that changed is the pattern into which my particles were arranged. And if I were to freeze to death, then my consciousness would definitely go away, but I would still consist of exactly the same particles. It's just that they were now rearranged in a, for me, rather unfortunate pattern.
Everything one experiences as truth is relative to how one is seeing and interpreting one's connection to and relation with everything around that individual in that current moment. A convicted felon may be angry and see the world as painful and bad, but maybe, after receiving love and compassion upon release, the truth that this convict may have once had has melted or shifted into another truth because something changed that convict was ready and willing to embrace as a new truth in that new moment. The geopolitical and geoeconomic revelations coming out at this time are radically beginning to shake humanity's idea of the bigger picture. As more and more disclosure information relating to ETs and our galactic families comes out, we will be forced to start addressing questions relating to the bigger picture of our existence and our place within creation as we currently know it. As Tegmark mentioned moments ago, we are all the same particles. Nothing has really changed, but something has changed. Although the global cabal attempted to separate God from science back in the mid-1500s, humanity is coming back full circle to the understanding that science, math, and the existence of the all that is are not, in fact, separate or exclusive of each other. In this week's final words, we are potentially on the cusp of an extraordinary shift in the world as we once knew it, and the world that is birthing into existence through a profound shift in human and planetary consciousness, with some help from friends and family whom we have not yet met from beyond Earth. Here is the challenge CVN and I have faced over the 4 years the broadcast has been on the air. Like each of you listening, and like me personally, CVN has been evolving through its own trial and errors, and has moved through its infancy and youth to learn from lessons, but still be humble enough to know that neither I nor the program know everything. But even as I write this, I also know that deep inside, I, and every listener and every human, do know the truth about all things, but we have needed to awaken to that truth through honorable service to humanity, our planet, and to all life around, upon, within, and beyond our planet. CVN's purpose in the beginning was to find a way to bridge the truth of the bigger picture, that is, the events that were being exposed to show how humanity has been controlled, manipulated, and enslaved, while also trying to share the emerging truth of the bigger picture, the ultimate evolution of humanity and our planet through spiritual awakening, a shifting human and planetary consciousness, and preparing for the emergence of Earth as a birthing galactic star nation through the revelations of benevolent galactic family members that have been trying to help us while also evolving through their own evolutionary and spiritual growth. I offered more esoteric and channeled messages in the beginning and incorporated them as a form of news reporting. And for the record, I still defend the use of channeled messages when those sources are accurately relating to what is happening. In the early years, CVN enjoyed extremely good ratings through Blog Talk Radio, achieving anywhere between 25 and 80,000 listens each week for about a year and a half. After the perceived disappointment of the expected events of December 21st, 2012, many gave up on the esoteric spiritual awakening. This was because they did not understand what happened. As well, there were spiritual sources who were promising certain events, selling products and services and marketing things that they had no right to promise, sell, or market, because each soul experiences each energetic shift in a uniquely different, equally beautiful way for the soul that is open to receiving it, however challenging the lesson may be in the process as energies and issues come up for release and healing. No two humans will experience the energetic changes the same way, and therefore there is no catch-all solution that any spiritual guru can offer, for no spiritual guru can truthfully claim to know the unique life path of each soul in order to offer the best guidance for assistance. There are always lessons to take away from each source, however, even if it is only the lesson that a particular source was not the right source for that particular individual. There are no guarantees, however. A channeled source can be influenced by the ego or by an external negative entity, as much as any mainstream reporter. Therefore, I do not make either source right or wrong. Each source is reporting what he or she believes to be the truth in that moment of now. If any of those sources are knowingly participating in putting out information that intentionally misleads humanity, then those sources, I believe, will have to answer to their choices at some point. CVN has had the very difficult service of attempting to bridge two distinctly different worlds, and yet these worlds are not different. The only thing that makes them different is the conditioning that has been drilled into people by governments, education, religion, media, and other societal institutions through our current lifetime, and indeed for centuries and even millennia before this. While attempting this service, CVN has also had the mandate to attempt to lay the foundation for a new journalism, a style of journalism that more closely reflected what the original vision of journalism was meant to be, a presentation of information so that people could make their own choices as to what was true for them, based on their current spiritual growth and personal journey in the current moment of now. I did not always succeed. In this way, I, and thus also CVN, continued to evolve into a better understanding of service through these mistakes. Over these 4 years, it had been my hope and dream that CVN would continue to evolve and grow, although this has not exactly happened. Over the years, I have observed other programs and hosts achieve greater financial success, although I question the integrity of some of those sources. I confess it was hard to watch some sources that I believed were not of the greatest integrity and service receiving such phenomenal support, and I was unable to have enough to get my own apartment to rent somewhere in the world. There were surely lessons for me in learning to receive that which I did receive with gratitude and humility, while also trying to understand that there is a much bigger picture that even I do not fully see. And thus, it has been a constant journey to remind myself to surrender to the process, even when I did not understand it. Again, there were times when I did better than other times. At its heart, CVN's original main vision was to help prepare humanity for the introduction of our galactic families, and this meant sharing disclosure information that I felt was relevant, while also showing how the geopolitical and geoeconomic structures were preventing humanity from attaining its full potential, while also giving hope through the revelations related to science, technology, and health, as well as to the existence of our galactic families, that could help empower humanity to take control of its collective future and begin reclaiming humanity and our planet from the enslavement of this global cabal in its multiple forms. It might appear that this moment is getting closer and closer. If all the converging sources are really connected at this time, then it is very possible that this week's newscast could very well be among the most important newscasts I have delivered yet, because we are coming to a point where all sources, be they astrological, be they spiritual, be they energetic, be they geopolitical, geoeconomic, or whatever else in nature, all sources are beginning to align at this moment, and this would suggest that the collective consciousness could very well be on the precipice of co-creating the required shift that will finally push humanity forward in a way that so many, myself included, have been talking about for years and even decades. Each human has had to awaken to his or her service at the appropriate time, and many of us agreed to wake up earlier, and we agreed to take the wrath, the scorn, the criticism, and indeed the punishments and loneliness that have accompanied that path. For the vast majority, we would not have had it any other way, for we have been committed to humanity and our planet even when others doubted it, and perhaps even in those times when we may have doubted it ourselves. Technologies are being released for those willing to look for them. Alternative health solutions are becoming not only more accessible, but more people are actively choosing them because they now see the frauds and lies of big pharma and big medicine. There are messages of soft disclosure flowing out almost daily, and videos of alleged sightings to fuel the imagination of a growing humanity that appears hungry and eager to be connected to the stars again. There are incredible geopolitical and geoeconomic events happening at this time that would blow most people's minds well into next month, if not next year. The revelations coming out at this time, combined with the energies connected to the astrological, spiritual, and energetic sources, are leading to the inevitable conclusion that the world we once knew, a denser, lower vibration, lower consciousness way of living, can no longer be sustained, and choices are now going to have to be made on multiple levels by individuals who are either ready and willing to participate in the co-creation of a new Earth, or remain attached to the lower energies and risk staying on a timeline that is less positive. This week's newscast offers info from both esoteric and traditional sources to affirm that many are now seeing this current period as one of the potentially greatest opportunities for physical shift upon this planet. Up to now, most of these shifts have occurred energetically, and most have not noticed them or acknowledged them. It will now be getting increasingly harder to avoid these changes because they will be happening physically in the world around each person, to her or his family, and to all relations. There is nothing that will be untouched by the energies unfolding at this time. For some, it will bring fear and chaos. For others, like myself and perhaps many of you, it will bring excitement, wonder, and relief. The events and the signs are suggesting that we are approaching a crossroads where a choice will have to be made. What are you willing to choose, and what are you willing to choose to let go of in your world that no longer serves the human you are now claiming to want to be? If any special broadcasts become necessary over the coming weeks, these will be considered. Co-create the most amazing week you can until our next moment of now. So that is the sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly from the CosmicVisionNews.com website. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary available on the website. CVN can be followed through its Facebook page, Minds.com page, and YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that to find peace, sometimes one has to be willing to lose one's connection with the people, places, and things that have created the noise in one's life. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.